so that from where you sit as the local, chapter of Transparency International that has done this over the years, what do you say to those who say it should have been worse? It shouldn't have remained where it is. He mentions Witness Protection Act. And some people say, yes, you passed Witness Protection Act, yet a journalist was murdered who was being a witness and all of that. What do you say?
Thank you very much, Samson. I just wanted to ask my brother Dindiok, now who caused him? Now who caused the citizens to be demanding excessively? But perhaps that's a point of introspection we all need to pay attention to. Because in this fight, when the citizen sees that the only way they can also benefit from their share of the national cake, then it shouldn't be surprising. I'm not in any way justifying such behavior, but then it's gotten to a point where in this democratic experiment, our political office holders and those whom we have given power onto to ensure that the affairs of the state are in a good place, have decided that they would enrich themselves and make things uncomfortable for the citizen. And so some of these behaviors are manifesting. Again, when they decide that they will pass half-baked laws, we continue to say when it comes to legislations, there is no way we are handicapped at all. But when you look at the details of those legislations that are passed, then you realize that we have a big challenge on our hands. You can see that manifesting in the affairs of the Office of the Special Prosecutor, when most of the cases he's trying to investigate are not standing the test of time. And so he is quickly also finding other avenues to collaborate. Then let me come to the question you asked about fairness. Samson, the Corruption Perception Index is an aggregate of various indices from a list of 3 and a maximum of 13 for any country to be able to make it into the index for any particular year. It is based on surveys that have been conducted 12 to 24 months within the period. It also captures the perceptions of experts and academics within the jurisdiction that have been conducted in various surveys that I mentioned, those 13. Again, and so even with that, you would understand that from a survey perspective, it is not what we would want to see that is manifesting, but we are speaking to the fact that we have data that stands the test of time. We are dealing with data that is credible, and if you are talking about issues of validity, we are very valid. We are also dealing with data that speaks of expert opinions and not citizens' opinions, expert opinions and experiences over the period I've spoken to. And so in the analysis are very succinct, the analysis are very cogent, the degree of margin of error is very low, and so whatever evidence is given is what it should be. And so even though you may say that there is a lot of talk about corruption going on in the country, and for that matter, we should have measured worse, that is not it. We are talking about Ghana being assessed based on 9 different data sources, and these data sources make us give us the place where we find ourselves, and we are not the only ones. We are with Senegal and another country which scored 43. Let me say that in the score, the issues that are dealt with are not just the issues of bribery. We talk about diversion of public funds. The score measuring corruption also talks about prevalence of public officials using public office for private gain without facing any consequences. We talk about ability of governments to contain corruption and enforce effective integrity mechanisms in the public sector. Again, the Corruption Perception Index looks at issues of meritocracy versus issues of nepotism and cronyism, effective criminal prosecutions for corrupt officials, and then adequate laws on financial disclosure and conflict of interest of public officials. Then again, we talk about legal protection for whistleblowers, including journalists, investigators, and others. State capture, which we have seen in the past week that Ghana's state capture ranking is increasingly becoming a worry, because even though we are not in a dangerous place, it is becoming worrying because it's gradually and progressively rising. Then access to civil society for information on public affairs. And as the two previous speakers have indicated, we are looking at a place where we want to see access to information going just beyond talking about it. We know the challenges that we have to face to get information. We have sent requests to some institutions. I remember National Lottery, and they came back to tell us that that is information that is within the secrecy jurisdiction and cannot be given to us. And that's not just the only one. We have had other examples. However, in the right to information case, we have the commission where you can go to for redress. When Honorable Dindiok mentioned the Whistleblower Act, I just wanted to also ask if the Whistleblower Commission, the Witness Protection Commission has been put in place. And that is the only way the activation of the witness protection would be. But witness
protection, that is even new. Whistleblower Act 2006. The fund that is supposed to be set up to make it attractive for people to blow the whistle and get compensated. The fund has not been set up since 2006. The law was passed. So if you are expecting that the witness protection, which is rather new, the process, the institution will be set up, then do you think you will get that?
Something that is why I'm saying that sometimes our legislators and the executive who draft these bills and get them through to get passed, I'm beginning to have the impression that some of the lapses that are in there are intentional, so that we find it difficult to prosecute the agenda of corruption. As a student of policy, some of these things are worrying, because if we put in place mechanisms that cannot be actualized in policy, then we are looking at the evidence of policy failure in our dispensation. And that is not what we want. We would be seeing some of these failures manifest in the lack of progress. And as citizens, it's painful. Painful also because when we were given the opportunity by this president, the current president, when he took power, he started, remember, as it was stated earlier, he came on the campaign on anti-corruption, and so his message, for which the people of Ghana voted for him, was one that was grounded on anti-corruption. Then I was listening to your earlier interview where the gentleman was talking about his record of not being corrupt. I think one of the other records was that this current president is spotless when it comes to allegations of corruption. Again, there was so much goodwill from the people of Ghana that they believe that such an anti-corruption expert, a legal luminary, of course, and an anti-corruption person would show some credence of those credentials. And yes, of course, he started by ensuring that he met stakeholders on a very frequent basis. And in one of such meetings, the president, His Excellency President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, requested that he wanted to understand how the Corruption Perception Index is calculated. And civil society was so happy that on this president who wants to fight corruption, I remember Dr. Akwete was part of this team. We went, the Ghana Integrity Initiative prepared a paper on this, and we went and submitted same. We actually showed some of the things I've talked about here. What are some of the components of corruption that goes into the various indices or the various surveys that are captured within the African Development Bank, be it World Bank, whichever. And it was a very good discussion where the president showed commitment that he would want to work towards changing the narrative. Unfortunately, after 2-3 meetings, the relationship, I don't know what happened, perhaps we need to resuscitate it, went into coma. And after the coma, these are some of the manifestations we have seen. So I believe from 2021, some things happened, and we have gotten to a place where we decided that we are very fine. We should stay at 43. However, I just wanted to make a brief submission before I bring my preliminary remarks to an end, that countries in Africa which have stagnated for a long period have tended to fall. And so until we make up our minds that we want to make an impressive turnaround and then pay attention to all those things that are used to measure the CPI, then we need to pay attention, because out of 6, 4 fell significantly. And when I say significantly, it means you are falling more than 5 points, like we did in between 2014 and 2015. If we want to make progress, 6 out of 4 countries, 6 countries, 4 fell, and only 2 were able to make some gains, and those were not significant.
Okay. Yes, and my final question to you will be, we are seeking to understand, for a government whose regime has passed the most important legislations to fight corruption, the RTI once again, the OSP Act, and yet it has not been able to make a dent, staying where it is. For a government that has been claiming, which some investigations show it's actually not a fact, that the Akufo-Addo regime has funded anti-corruption bodies more than any other government. The fact check at the Media Foundation for West Africa did their fact check, and they came to the conclusion that that claim is false. It's false on 2 levels. That the percentage or the interest, when they look at the money today, they are not comparing to the money yesterday when for example, in the NDC regime, they were giving the money. So you must compare the money and talk about the value of the money, not just the quantum. And then again, for the individual institutions, they found out, for example, that the audit service, judicial service, the SHRAJ, the claims of providing more funding to these institutions than any other government was false. Why was it false? They looked at how much indeed they received. So that if you took the audit service for a period between 2013 to 2016 under the NDC, and then for a period between 2017 and 2020 under the NPP, the NDC government, the rate of confirmation or approvals of the monies they needed, they approved 117.4% of the budgetary request, whilst in the Akufo-Addo regime, it was 84% that was approved. If you take the judicial service, there was approval under the Mahama regime within the same period, 88% approval rate of confirmation of the budget they needed. In the Akufo-Addo regime, the approval was 72%. If you take SHRAJ, in the Mahama regime, within the same period, the approvals were 108%, whilst in the Akufo-Addo regime, it was 90%. So they say these claims yeah, the quantum, whatever it is, but it's false. What do you say?
Samson, perhaps maybe let's not argue about whether this is true or not. Let's concede to them that this current government is the one which has resourced the anti-corruption institutions more than any other, which we all know is not the case anyway. There's evidence to that effect. However, if we put in inputs, something, we expect to achieve outputs. And so if these inputs are positive, we are expecting positive outputs. And so if you have resourced the agencies, then it means something is wrong somewhere. Either our anti-corruption institutions are not working as they should. I am also informing you, for instance, for Shrine, until recently, they didn't even have district offices everywhere across the country. Until recently. And most of the others do not. So, and then when you go to some of these offices, the sorry nature of them, they lack resources, they lack staff. The resourcing is money and staff as well. Shrine at the headquarters level is also struggling. And so whether we have given more than any other is besides the point. What we are talking about is if you have put in more, it should be evidenced by the outputs we are making. We see rhetoric on putting in more. We see budgets on putting in more. However, when it comes to the actual disbursements, I was on another platform with the Deputy Attorney General, and he indicated no institution has enough resources to operate. And so what the government has done is more than enough. That is true, that no institution has adequate resources to operate, and we are talking about where we are coming from. So for this government to continue to say that they have given more resources than any other, then it means they need to put in some very stringent KPIs for their investigative body.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I want you to give me just the list. You said the 3 pillars under which this is done. On which of the pillars is leading Ghana to this very poor showing all the time?
Something, almost all of them. All of them. When you talk about the issues around bribery is so predominant. And remember, it's in the public sector. This survey talks about the public sector. Okay. And we know the issues around procurement, the issues around independence of our institutions. And that is a no-brainer, very important. And then when you look at the issues around the independence of those institutions to be able to speak to, look at what is happening in the case of the special prosecutor. He has had cause to come out to lament and cry out for support. Okay. That is not good enough. And then the critical aspect is what leadership is showing out there by its actions. So we say the laws must be seen to be robust enough, because in most of the indicators, the law is looked at from a legal and a practice point of view, and Ghana falls short in many of these. All right, thank you very much. Mary Addah is the Executive Director of the Ghana Integrity Initiative. That's the local chapter of Transparency International, the global watchdog that has been doing this project over the years.